Hey everyone, this is Fresno State News and we're reporting for Dr. Ramon's epidemiology class. I'm Bernadette.
I'm Jessica.
I'm Hannah.
I'm Lupe.
I'm Hazel.
I'm Preet.
This is Bernadette and she will introduce the topic of Group 2 study.
Hello Jessica, how are you?
I'm great, thanks.
Good. Well, my name is Bernadette and we have looked into the correlation between obese and non-obese adults with asthma living in California. In our study, we hypothesized that obese adults are more likely to have asthma.
Why is this health issue important to your study?
Asthma is an issue primarily because the side effects of asthma can be debilitating. Respiratory issues related to asthma can prevent the individual from proper and adequate exercise, which can then lead to other health issues also related to obesity.
In your study, you have claimed that obesity is a risk factor for those with asthma. Why does your group believe this?
Well, we used the chi-square test, and that did reject our null hypothesis, which was that there is no statistically significant difference between the prevalence of asthma in obese and non-obese adults in California.
Thank you, Bernadette.
Thank you.
Right?
Yay!
Hi, Hannah is here to discuss the literature review she's found. So Hannah, how prevalent is obesity?
Well, the current estimates from the CDC are that 30% of the U.S. population is obese, with an additional 35% as overweight. The prevalence of obesity is rising steadily. The CDC also indicates that adults with obesity have doubled in the last 20 years. The CDC defines overweight adults as those with a BMI of 25 to 29.9 and obese as a BMI of over 30.
So how prevalent is asthma?
According to the CDC, there are nearly 18.7 million adults that are living with asthma.
Is obesity a risk factor for asthma?
Yes, there is an increasing amount of data that supports the relationship between asthma and obesity. Our study also supports these findings. Much of these reports have shown that obesity precedes the onset of what is most of the time very severe asthma.
Do obesity and asthma share a common etiology?
Yes, the studies have shown that something such as a genetic predisposition, common effects of in utero conditions, and physical activity or diet could lead to the prevalence of obesity and asthma. However, there are also biological mechanisms whereby obesity could be expected to either cause or worsen asthma. These can include the comorbidities such as gastroesophageal reflux, complications from sleep-disordered breathing, breathing at low lung volume, chronic systemic inflammation, or other endocrine factors.
So why do you think obese people are more prone to severe asthma?
Well, in the obese, the functional residual capacity is reduced because of changes in the elastic properties of the chest wall. Lung volume and tidal volume are also reduced, and it promotes airway narrowing. Obesity also leads to a state of low-grade systemic inflammation that may act on the lung to cause asthma. Obesity-related changes in adipose-derived hormones, including leptin and adipocytin, may participate in these events.
So what are some of the other risk factors for asthma that weren't included in your study?
Having a blood relative, such as a parent or sibling with asthma, having another allergic condition, being overweight, being a smoker or being exposed to secondhand smoke, having a mother who smoked while pregnant, exposure to excessive pollution, exposure to occupational triggers such as chemicals, and even hairdressing and manufacturing. Low birth weight is also another risk factor, and exposure to allergens or certain parasites or germs have some type of risk factor as well.
So what would you say were some of the limitations in your study?
Well, one of the major limitations of our study would be its lack of variables. We examine asthma and obesity in adults throughout California, leaving out many other risk factors and topics. In addition, our study and many others have found that asthmatics adopt a more sedentary lifestyle, which could possibly lead to obesity in this population. Another concern is that asthma would be diagnosed more frequently in the obese and overweight population because they are more likely to visit the doctor for other health-related problems.
What do other studies show?
In an analysis that I found of the NHA-NES data, it showed that obese individuals were 44% more likely to be diagnosed with asthma compared to non-obese individuals. It was a cross-sectional study of about 2,000 patients of women with a BMI greater than 30, and it had an odds ratio of 2.6. The increased risk was actually not apparent in males.
Okay, thank you, Hannah.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, we have Hazel here discussing how the study was done. So Hazel, what is your part in this study?
My part is the methodology. I worked on the chart.
How are you going to conduct the study?
The study has already been conducted by the chess. From there, we just chose variables we wanted to focus our study on and test our hypothesis. We then wanted to conduct our study on whether there is a correlation between asthma, overweight, or obese adults living in California.
What is the chess?
CHESS is a population-based telephone survey of California's population conducted every 2 years since 2001 by UCLA in collaboration with 3 other agencies. It's also one of the nation's largest state health survey. This is done by randomly selecting an age group to interview within each household and covering a wide range of health topics.
So what is the data source?
The data source being used is the 2009 CHESS adult data file to determine the factors of interest.
Who is the target population?
In this case study, we are focusing on adults between the ages of 18 and over as a target population.
So in your study, what statistical method did you decide to use?
The statistical method we decided to use was the chi-square. We wanted to use a method that was easy and can be understood clearly, a 2x2 table, that shows rows and columns in a cross tabulation, which a chi-square does it for us. It's one of the simplest and most used tests to determine whether there is a difference between 2 variables or more being studied. By entering that data in the SPS program, it was able to calculate exactly the results we wanted to see. Each cell gave the total of numbers and percentage and the p-value, which helped determine whether our hypothesis is correct and reject our null hypothesis.
So can you explain the variables used in your study?
Yes. The first variable we chose for this study is under health condition, which is asthma, focusing it directly on doctors ever told have asthma. The other variable is a health behavior, precisely the BMI, narrowing it down to only those that are overweight or obese.
All right, thank you, Hazel. Hello again. We have Tarnpreet here to discuss the results she's found from the study.
Hello there, everyone. I'm so excited to come on the show and explain to everyone the results that we got from this study. We were able to see a significant difference between the rates of asthma among the overweight and non-overweight people. The results suggest that gaining weight eventually leads to asthma. The subjects in this study reported that about 8.5% of them were obese or overweight and have asthma. This shows the higher rate of asthma in obese adults compared to the 5% that were not obese and had asthma still. Being a study of 47,614 adults, 6,441 of them had been told by their doctor that they had asthma. From that total, 26,715 were obese or overweight. After doing the chi-square test, which calculated to be 0, we had even more confidence about the results of our study.
Thank you, Tarnpreet.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Hi, Lupe. Could you please discuss your findings in the study?
Hi. Well, our result shows that there is a correlation between obesity and asthma. Therefore, my group and I have decided to accept our hypothesis. As it was previously mentioned, there is a significant number that shows the link that people that are obese have a higher chance of developing asthma. As we look back to our chart, and 8.5% of the population who were obese had developed asthma, and only a 5% of the population who were not obese still developed asthma. According to our literature review, there have been several studies done. Many have shown a correlation between obesity and having asthma. For example, according to the United States Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the new cases that were possible for asthma could increase also due to the new patients that were obese. About 30% of the populations are obese. As it was shown in the table, there's a large number of people
that doesn't know that they have asthma due to their obesity. This could be a problem. They could not be treated for that reason because they don't have asthma. Being obese could also have a higher problems for a person that also suffers with asthma. For example, obesity could interfere with their lung volume and they could prevent a person from receiving enough air. Also, having 2 or more diseases could cause obesity, such as diabetes, hypertension, or sleep disorder. Breathing could make a person provoke or complicate their asthma.
So everyone, as we've heard today, we can conclude that there is a correlation between asthma and obese adults in California. This means that we have rejected our null hypothesis, which is that there is a statistically significant difference between having asthma if you are obese or not. Some of the preventive measures to take would be to have proper diet and exercise regularly to prevent obesity and eventually asthma.